Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a edition of the Gear Change Show um, here on Friday, the April 26th, 2024. Here for episode 532, also episode 41 for the year. So hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gear Change Show here on a Friday night. And I'm also going to do part two, which is going to be the Spa 1,000 kilometers or 6 hours. 1,000 kilometers or 6 hours, 6 hour race, and its history. So for those of you who don't know what Spa Francorchamps is, it is it's a motor racing track or a motor racing circuit Spa de Francorchamps circuit Spa of Franco de la Francorchamps, which is Spa of Francorchamps. So it's, and what's funny is the reason why they call it, why it's in Stavelot, is because, well, one of the corners is Stavelot. Spa Francorchamps was set pre-war, and it was a huge racetrack. Spa had many configurations. Spa Franco. Yeah, because one of the cars is, well, yeah, one of the is Stavelot, and it's FIA grade 1 GP. It's grade 2 and 6R for rallycross. It was opened over 102 years ago in 1921 August, and it's held Formula 1, Spa 24 Hours International GT Challenge, the 6 hours of Spa. It used to be the Spa 1,000 kilometers at one point, but it's now been rebranded. And it used to have the FIA GT Championship, which was the Spa 24 Hours. There's been There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 configurations. So the first one is obviously the one we have present, but I'm going to start from the oldest to the newest. So when the circuit was opened in 1921, the first pre-war circuit was done from 1921 to about 1938, so pre-war. That was 9.31 miles long and had 25 turns. Fastest lap of all time was 5 minutes and 4 seconds by Herman Lang in a Mercedes 1937 121 W112 125, one of the silver arrows. And then there was the old circuit that was used post-war, which was used between 39 and 78. That was 8.6 miles, 8.7.61, so bigger than Le Mans. That was the fastest time was a Group 5 sports car, Hunter Pescarolo Matrosimka MS670B, which was the sprint race slash wing version, high downforce version, with a very scalding 3 minutes and 13 seconds in 1973. And then after that, because of what I'm about to tell you, the circuit history is it was put down to 4.317 miles Gordon Spice in a Ford Capri 3.79 Group 1 did in 2 minutes 48 seconds. Then it was modified again in 81 that went from 81 to 93, 4.312 miles. That was 19 turns. Well, the old Grand Prix circuit was, the Grand Prix circuit that we know today was, the Grand Prix circuit was 17 turns, 19 turns, and then the Grand Prix circuit in 1994 was run from, was only run in 94 because of a chicane at Eau Rouge. Eau Rouge is going to be a famous corner that goes left, right, left. It goes left, right, left, and it goes up into the Kemmel Straight, which I'll explain in a moment. Schumacher has the fastest time with that, with a 1:47.176, 19 turns, and that track is, by the way, Damon Hill, the only year, was a 1:57.1794 with this FW16 Williams Formula 1. Michael Schumacher and with the F 2002 and 2002, kind of funny. And then the Grand Prix circuit from 2004-2006. Again, you're just going to see 19 turns. Kimi Räikkönen, MP4 19B 2004, 1 minute 45.18 seconds, 19 turns, 4.335 miles. Man, there's a lot. There's a lot of configurations because this track changed so much. You'll see why. Then the modern Grand Prix circuit, then the motorcycle circuit was 4.341 miles, 20 turns, and it was Sylvain Guttoli with a Suzuki GSX-R 1000 and 2023 in the FIA Endurance Challenge with a 2 minutes 20 second, and Valtteri Bottas in the new Grand Prix circuit that measures 4.352 miles, 20 turns, 146.262 in a Mercedes W09 2018 version Formula 1. That's just how slow these new Formula 1 cars have gotten, because they haven't broken a track record yet, because they are 1 million pounds overweight. But so you guys got all those things, so you guys got all those configurations. You guys understand that the track was originally 9.3 miles, and then it was 8.7 or 8.8, 8.7 or 8.8, and then it was 4.3 most of its rest of its life after 78 because of certain things. So I'll explain why certain things happened, and I'll explain why Spa is difficult as it is. So from what I gather, in 1921, ground was broken, and it was actually the longest Grand Prix. It was actually the longest circuit available at that time, because the Nürburgring hadn't been invented yet. That wouldn't break for another 3 or years. Le Mans wouldn't be set and wouldn't be laid out for another 2 years. Well, the planning would be in 1922, but it wasn't until 1923. But at 9.3 miles, it was a big track. Actually, I think it was Le Mans originally. Circuit de la Sarthe. Circuit of the Sarthe. So that opened in 1923, and that was about 100 years ago. corrected. I think Le Mans. So Spa Francorchamps track configurations. So this is what Spa looked like from you imagine 1921 to 1938. That was pre-war. So I'm going to talk about that first. So ground broke on Spa in 19. So I think ground broke on Spa in the 1920s, and then eventually was finished in 1921, and then early 1900s post-war. First after the First World War, and it opened up, and obviously this was more of the Grand Prix cars. So any of the Grand Prix style cars, any of the Champ cars, any of the big displacement Grand Prix and race cars, cars that would go in the French Grand Prix, the Bordeaux, and the German Grand Prix, and all these other ones where they would race them on roads and stuff like that. And the track was very long. I mean, at 9.31 miles, it was it was not unheard of for tracks to be anywhere from 9 to 14 miles long, because they hadn't quite have heard the short track yet, and they wanted to test the endurance of their cars. So a small little two-little oval like we had here in America wouldn't have done it, because I don't think they wanted to compete with Indy, because I don't think they wanted to do what Indy did. I mean, and these cars had to survive rough roads and stuff like that. I mean, if you ever seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or any of the old movies where the Grand Prix race, you'll know how tough and how dangerous these races were, especially 9.31 miles. And back then, the cars weren't really moving all that fast. The cars were moving, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe 50 miles an hour. And that was all they could do, because the tires were bad. And you could only imagine, most of these were unpaved roads. There was no street circuit, and there was muck, grime, rain, soot. You could only imagine that getting into mechanical bits and really making it hard for race cars. And as cars got faster into the 20s until mid to late 30s, when the Silver Arrows came along, it was generally, I think they started paving the track. I think the track was mostly unpaved at one point, and then they eventually paved it, and that's when speed started to go up. I think a lap time was, well, you guys can imagine at 40 miles an hour, a lap time probably being 8-9 minutes, and then at the end of the 30s, it being like 5 to 6 minutes long, depending on the conditions. I mean, Herman Lang slinging around a W125, slinging around a 125 at those speeds, at the speeds that they were going. A 5.6 liter V8. You can only imagine slinging one of these things around at nearly 200 miles an hour. And the Kemmel Straight, and was the Kemmel Straight around back then? I can only imagine what they were doing on the straightaways. Did they have the Kemmel Straight back then? They did not. They had Mazda in Hallwell and Stavelot. I think the longest uninterrupted run was Medley and the Master Kink. Master Kink was this high speed, right left. It was this flick, and it unsettled a lot of cars. And the Master Kink stayed in service for a long time, and then eventually they got Master Kink was in there still. So, the 1930s rolled around, and, there were, of course, fatalities and stuff like that. And they were fatalities and stuff like that. People did perish on these tracks because of how dangerous they were. And eventually modern things like seatbelts and safety harnesses and all this other stuff ended up becoming a thing. And the Second World War happened because in 1939, the war went to war because Germany was being a pain in the ass. And while the 1930s elapsed into the 40s, and we had to deal with all the Allied and the Free World had to deal with the Nazi regime, and we had to down the Third Reich, and then eventually in 1939, and then in 19 and then I don't think people started really racing, I think, until the late 40s, the mid to late 40s. The track guide says that it was 1938, but says that it was 1938, but it was really 1946, 1947, because we were trying to rebuild after. I'm pretty sure the track got bombed and hit during all the bombing runs back then. And I think after the war, cars started getting quicker, and the cars didn't start getting quicker. The cars only started having that kind of horsepower. I don't think it was until 51, 52, 53 that the cars started getting more power and started getting 300-400 horsepower. And sports cars started to also race on the track, I believe, at some point. Formula One was also getting, but now it was dawning into its aerodynamic fuel tank airplane fuselage style designs to go as fast as possible and cut through the air, because the engineers figured out that was the best way to get the cars to go fast, was to put smaller engines, make lighter cars, and make the cars weigh 4 or 500 kilograms, like 1,000 to 11 to 12,000 pounds, basically. And that started creating a lot of problems because even with the lap belts and with all the safety harnesses, a good crash could have killed all the safety harnesses, and you could be flung out of the car if something broke on the chassis or something like that. And I believe in the 1950s and the 1960s, Jackie Stewart started coming around, and I think it was after one particular crash in 1960s, where he was going through the Master King. It was this left-right flick, and he was in a what happened? Let's see. So what really set the whole thing in motion was in 1966 when he was racing in Jackie Stewart was racing in BRM in 1966, and what happened was Jackie was racing, and the old circuit was 8.7 miles. So after you went through La Source and the start-finish rate and Eau Rouge and stuff like that, you go through Malmedy, and you go on what was the beginning of the Camel Straight, then you go through Malmedy, and then you go through that long run. And cars at that point, in 1966, the cars were making about 380, 390 horsepower, thereabouts. And it was right about then that the cars were weighing 1,100 to 1,200 pounds. And you can only imagine with 380 horsepower, 390 horsepower. Well, the BRM back in 1966, I think, was making around 410, 420. So it was the most powerful car on the field with the 3-liter V16. And they ended up going over, the cars were approaching the master kink at almost 170 to 190 miles an hour, depending on what car you were. And I think the story goes he was traveling at 180, and I think a suspension piece failed or something like that, or he lost control, or he just, because the mental concentration to go on this track was so big. I mean, all tracks require that, but it was right there and then that his car left the road. And Jackie Oliver once said that when you went off the track, you didn't know what you were going to hit. And you don't know where you didn't know if you were going to line up in a light pole, an electric pole, a hail bell, a house, a ditch, or somebody's backyard, or somebody's front window, or something like that, or somebody's potting, or somebody's garden, or somebody's potting shed, or something like that. And Jackie ended up missing a farmhouse, and he ended up rolling over. And there was no rollover hoops back then, folks. So he ended up landing in a ditch, face down, fuel gushing out, and they had to get metal openers and a saw and try to cut away the bodywork and get him out, unstrap him. He had 2 broken ribs out of it. So by then, between that and the Nürburgring, he kind of sat there, and he kind of said, boys, we kind of have to. He said, boys, we have to. He said, boys, and he told the Grand Prix establishment. He goes, boys, we have to change the rules, and we have to make this place safer. So back then it was mostly public roads, and it was all open. If you go onto any racing simulator where there's the old Spa configuration, you can play it on Assetto Corsa. You can play it on Assetto Corsa, and you can play it on Assetto Corsa or Project Cars 2 or Project Cars 3. And you're going to notice when you go by some of the houses in a Formula 1 car, you can notice you go past people's driveways. So you can literally slam into somebody. So you literally can go off the road. And so these guys who are going about 160, 170, 180 miles an hour in these cars could literally scheme out the road and hit somebody's automobile that weighed 2,400 pounds. You imagine? The car would just crumple like a ball and disintegrate at that speed. In fact, you'd be able to shoot through it. In fact, you'd create a dent so hard you would die on impact, practically. And one spark from the engine or ruptured fluid line, ba-bam. You took out and if you went to somebody's house and it exploded, somebody's house would go on fire and all this other stuff. So what they ended up doing was they put Armcos and they put Armco barriers and other stuff. So if you go off the road in one of the games, you're going off and hitting a house or hitting a car, although you'll bounce off and explode your car because race car game physics these days can't show gore and all that other stuff, or you wouldn't be able to sell. So needless to say, Armco barriers went up, and the circuit was going to have to be changed, and it wasn't until 70 that they started that Formula One started to boycott the racetrack, because normal passenger and road cars could do that because they had 4 wheels, they had more bodywork, they had more downforce. Downforce was also becoming a thing in the 60s and 70s. So they started to, until cars started to sprout wings, they would not run at Spa. I don't think it was until 71, 72, 73 that they'd start running at Spa and stuff like that, because they had wings and they had a better grip on aerodynamics. People were starting to learn downforce back then, and um, and and it really came to a head, and the cars racing on the circuit were starting to get faster and faster because um, the well back then mostly Group 5 sports cars were running there, so any of Ferrari's smaller cars back in 71, 72, 73 were running there. So in like 70, 71, um, the 917 did not run there. They would run the 96, they run the 908 and the 312P because they were better at adept at holding, and the speeds were lower. It wasn't until 72, 73, 74 that the that the car started becoming too fast, and that's the reason why we got the top speed of where we got the lap record of 3 minutes 13 seconds with the 9 with the Matra MS670B, the long tail, well, not the long tail, I should say the short tail. I should say the short tail version, the short tail aerodynamic version that made more downforce. But at 3 minutes 13, it was equaling a 917 at Le Mans, and Le Mans was about half a mile, so it was about not less than half a mile slower, half a mile longer, half a mile shorter than that. So it was around that Formula One and everything else like that, and then in 1976, 1977, I think it was around 1976 that people started to realize that they couldn't run on the Nürburgring and with Formula One cars, and Spa was starting to it was by 1977 that I think there was another boycott, and I think in 1978 they didn't run the race, and they didn't run the race as much, and then eventually in 1979 they went to the configuration that they're using today, although with different things. And Spa was home to the Spa 24-hour, so that would be the other race that would run there, and that was with touring cars and GT cars all over the years, from like the 1950s all the way on until I'm going to say until the 90s. It was mostly touring cars, and then now it's GT, and it was GT1, GT2, and GT3 cars now as today. So of course we have the Spa 6-hour, which we're Spa 1,000 kilometer, Spa 6-hour, which when was it first run? 6 hours of Spa. First run in 1953, so it was around 53 that they started running. So it started out with Jaguars and Aston Martins and stuff like that, DBR1s, and most of these were non-championship. No, I misspoke. 917K did actually. No, I misspoke. 917 did actually run at Spa. Fastest lap was a 316. I misspoke, but I know that the 908s actually did run there, just in case they didn't have 908s just there. So Spa Francorchamps, the Spa, the 20. When did the 24-hour start run? Spa 24. The Spa 24 has been held since 24, so. So the Spa 24 has been held since 24, so that was first for touring cars, cars with small displacement, and then eventually it came up into the GT3 style class, although that we have today, and then in the 80s we had Stefan Belop's crash, and Jackie X having the all-time lap record at lap record in the 917, obviously for the Spa 1000, and Stefan Belop having the crash. The 80s went through Group C era, although because of the fuel economy limits and the way how the track was done, after 78 the track was shortened to 4.3 miles, 4.3, 4.35, 3.52, and whatnot. You guys when I give you guys the track descriptions, you guys can go on Wikipedia, and you guys can go on track info sites all over the web to get all these. Then 90s Formula One still went there because the cars were getting faster. In fact, the cars were able to handle the circuit because the aerodynamics were starting to get to the point where you could basically go around the circuit and not really lift, and the cars were starting to go over 200 miles an hour, and they were starting to be safer. Although it wasn't until 1994 they were starting to get really fast. It wasn't until 1994 that there was a change, and the Spa Formula One race was changed. I think they had to put a chicane at Eau Rouge and a couple other places because of the Ayrton Senna accident in 1994 at the San Marino Grand Prix. They had to make a bunch of changes to the cars and stuff like that, and I think they did run in the 90s and the 2000s and stuff like that. And I don't think the modern 1,000-kilometer races started to come back. It wasn't until like 2001, 2002, 2003 that I don't think it was until 1999, 2000 that the modern 1,000-kilometer races were starting to come through, and that's where we get the 1,000 kilometers of Spa and the 6 hours of Spa, which is what we have today at the new track. And so and the Spa 6 hours has been run by many teams and been done by many race car teams and stuff like that. And I could talk about the Spa 1000, about the Spa 24, but I don't want to talk about that because that's another topic. I'll cover that when it comes up in the summer. Until it comes up in the summer. So, or when it shows up. I forget when they run this. When they run the Spa 24 hour this year. June 26th to June 30th, which is around the time when Watkins Glen is. So the Spa 24 hour, I will talk about that one, but I'm going to talk about the Spa 6 hour and the Spa 1,000 kilometer, and kind of give you an idea of the different cars that kind of race there and everything like that. But I just wanted to give you as an overview of the track and how it changed over the years, and how with aerodynamics and horsepower and especially ground effect, Formula One cars and cars have been getting quicker and quicker, even though their lap times have not been getting quicker. They're kind of slow now that they weigh almost 2,000 pounds. So yeah, kind of a story on the Spa Francorchamps track, and kind of a history and kind of how the track evolved and stuff like that, and just how crazy how they went from a public road circuit like Le Mans, and then eventually they went to a closed racing circuit like most other racetracks in the world. So, and how couple of how many nasty accidents and how the Master Kink kind of screwed that up. And I'll talk about the different regulations that we're through the Spa 1,000 kilometers and tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night. But yeah, you guys kind of have an idea of what the Spa. You guys kind of figure how dangerous it is, how fast this track was, and how brutal some accidents could be, and stuff like that. I kind of wanted to not go into Formula One because Formula One's kind of boring sometimes. But if the F1 Grand Prix comes up, I'll talk about that a little bit. I'll talk about some facts. But you guys kind of know that the track was very dangerous, and you know, it's just like the Nürburgring and Le Mans. All of them are very dangerous, and if you get it wrong, you know, things can happen. So, but this has been an overview of the Spa racetrack and kind of my look at it, and you know, kind of giving you guys an idea of how it changed over the years, how safety concerns changed it, and how the World Championships that ran at it. And I'll talk about the Stefan Beloff crash more at tomorrow, and you know, how the cars kind of existed. So you guys kind of got an idea that, you know, there used to be, you know, GT cars, you know, the Spa 24 Hour, there's been GT cars from Ferraris to Corvettes and Porsches and stuff like that. Ferraris, Porsches, and Corvettes and stuff like that. And that will obviously be in the 1,000 kilometer thing, because there's been Corvettes that have contested in the European Le Mans series, in the Le Mans, the European and Le Mans series, the European Le Mans series, the Le Mans Endurance Series, or the Le Mans series of Le Mans Endurance, the ELMS, the LMS, as it's called. How that differs, how that's similar to the American Le Mans series, and the World Sports Car Championship that rode through. I'll tell you guys regulation changes, how the circuits really, how they were really trying to change the way how the cars ran because of different regulations, and how things were going at the time, and how fuel crises kind of changed the way how things were run, and how the races today with all this hybrid electric tech and stuff like that. So I'll talk about that tomorrow, and I hope you guys enjoyed this, digest it, because there's going to be more in part 2 tomorrow. So I will see you guys tomorrow for part 2 for the gear change show. Well, good night. Remember, folks, the fastest car in the fastest gear never always wins. It's the one that's the safest that wins. Good night, folks.